I do like a multitude of things and a little bit of everything in a way, because I like the change, I like the challenge, and I like to dabble in a lot of things, but that actually makes it hard to put like a label on it. Rainy day, on a rainy day.
I'm at Bowdown Woods today, which is, we've walked here, you and I, together before. It kind of has a military history, buried sometimes in parts of the woodland, or not so deeply buried as it goes, are mounds and what used to, I think, be storage facilities for munitions being kept. We're quite close to Greenham Common Air Base. I'm not sure whether it has anything to do with that, although I think this was Army owned. It was nothing to do with the Air Force. And occasionally, as you walk along these asphalt strips that snake through woodland, which is a bit unusual, you come to, well, let me get a picture of this one, actually. This is very representative of things that you find in this particular woodland on this walk. Asphalt that's been being taken back by moss, lichen, trees, bushes. Makes an interesting abstract shape, actually. Let me get a picture. My first sketchbook for the day, using the faithful X100V, f4, shutter speed, 400th, underexposing a bit, 160 ISO. There we go. Wasn't sure, actually, whether to take pictures in a square format today. I felt in a kind of, because, well, you heard the Rain song just a moment ago. One of my favourite pieces of music when I get to late autumn, early-ish winter each year with a Photowalk, or the rainy season at least, because it is today. We're in and out of a storm that's sort of, it's touching the very edges of where I'm walking today anyway. So 1 minute, like at the moment, it's okay. Just a slight rainfall. You probably can't hear it too well, but we can be in and out of quite heavy rain showers. I don't know what's going to happen with the letters today. They'll be sopping by the end of it. A really interesting thing or three came out of today's conversation with my guest, Karin Majoka, who's a YouTuber and a photographer and a psychotherapist whose voice you heard a few moments ago. It's something, it's interesting to me that while said in a photographic context during our chat coming up, it's actually the kind of thing that we talk about often here when it comes to how we photographically identify. And it doesn't matter if you're a professional photographer, a semi-pro, an amateur, someone who photographs on their smartphone for an Instagram grid. This thing, this requirement, this need to be labelled, particularly in photography and the creative arts. What are you then? What box can I fit you neatly into today? How can I file you? What do I file you under? Don't you dare go wandering off the path now, will you? I need to have you sorted. You need to be in your category, you two. And it's something that in my photographic life is something that looms, and it's always loomed large really as it goes. I'm going to sound like I'm at a 12 steps meeting now. Hello everybody, I'm Neil, and I am a wedding photographer. Oh, right you are then, Neil. Now I understand you. You're one of those, are you? And I think I learned from my conversation today that you don't have to have a category, that your style, your approach, the breadth of your humanity, he says, sounding a bit woo-woo, your ability to be you and be curious about what you see, that's your style. And sure, some people's style is very discernibly them, isn't it? I mean, I refer you to one of my favourites, Don McCullen's foreboding landscapes that are every bit as dark as his work in some of the most desperate, war-torn places that he's photographed on Earth, or perhaps a Platon portrait, where you get up very, very close to the person that's being photographed. Very personal, so much so you could probably count the pimples with an air of distortion because you pushed your lens in that intimately. You can recognise those people immediately, can't you? That's a feeling, that's a style. Maybe it's a very clear genre. But the rest of the time, could it be the case that your genre is simply you? Now, it's a bit like branding. Now, we've had this conversation of late as well, haven't we? Where somebody, I've had this conversation in particular, where somebody tried to work out what my brand is or was on my photographic website. I was entirely at a loss in some respects because I'm not sure really quite what they meant. I mean, was it my logo? Was it my tone? Was it the writing? Was it the feeling from the photographs? And I asked my guest today, who thinks very much about people and what makes them tick in her work as a therapist and background as a psychologist, as much as when she carries a camera. I ask her what genre she believes she fits into, only to be, let's say, guided gently to think about the idea of boxes and how they really have very little to do with who we actually are. So welcome to the Photowalk podcast, a show where we walk and we make pictures photographically, he says, as he can you hear it? As he steps through the mud today. Oh, how a few weeks make so much difference. Sketchbooking our time together each week, enjoying the letters and the inspirational stories that you've sent in. So the brand of all this, if I was to think of a brand for the Photowalk show, well, I like to think it's kindness and community. But of course, over the next hour and a half or so, you can be the judge.
Today on the Photowalk.
I think with a film camera, the unexpected notion of it really drew me into it. And I feel like what I was lacking with digital photography, or why I was having those negative thoughts about it in the beginning, is because I never saw it as a craft that you do with your hands. And so photography, taking a camera, going outside, having fresh air, having to move, is something that honestly I think is a very, very good medicine. I'm not sure which direction it really is, if maybe the curiosity is there and this is why, I pick up a camera, or if the curiosity comes because I have a camera in my hand and I want to explore more. Well, I think the videos that I like to make the most are probably the less successful ones, honestly, which just is how it is.
That's Karin Majoka, and you'll meet her properly in a while. And before I give you a flavour of what's in today's mailbag that we also have on this walk, thank you to our extra milers and mpb.com who sponsor this show and keep it here, or keep us walking here, week on week on week. mpb.com, they are a website where you can safely buy and sell and trade quality used photo and video gear online and be a part of the circular economy. If you're buying, you get peace of mind with a 6-month guarantee, and if you're trading or selling, MPB will send a courier to pick up your kit. As I've said before, it's usually a bloke called Dave on a day you specify. And once it's arrived back at their warehouse and gone through the checks to make sure it's been graded properly, you get paid directly into your account quickly. mpb.com is an easy-to-use website and is helping photographers to buy quality used kit or sell gear that we no longer need to free up cash and give others a chance to make their stories. Go to mpb.com. I will have a link on today's show page. It's a service that I use and I've been happy with for many, many years. In fact, the camera that I'll be taking out on the Photowalk today, the X100V, my trusty X100V, was bought through mpb.com. On the show today then, returning to scorched lands of this summer's cruel wildfires in Nova Scotia to find a somewhat welcome surprise from Mother Nature. A story which sort of involves the set of The Shining and a dribbly-nosed child. We take some feedback from last week's show about world events right now. Wish You Were Here postcard or two. In fact, one from a beautiful dark alleyway in deepest Australia land, and a railway extravaganza in the Northern Hemisphere, or Chester to be precise. Usually it being the third Friday of the month, Mally Davis is here as a regular feature, talking about the beauty of being in nature and photographing that thing we take for granted, the lungs of our planet, trees. Though he's here in a few weeks' time for the Zoom Live Extra Mile show instead, which is not a Tuesday in November, as usual, first Tuesday in the month, but a Monday. The first one, though, of the month, Monday 6th of November. Note for the diary for those who are extra milers. Right, Shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee? Check. Garibaldi's? Check. Walking boots? Check. Rainproof pants in both the British and transatlantic translation of the word today? Check. Let's walk.
I'm not with Sir Barkalot today. There's, because of the rain, and because there's a lot to do. Oh my word, look at this, sorry. This is a Mally moment. I've stopped, centre of speech. What a glorious tree. I will never do this justice as I look at it. I mean, the maturity of this in front of me, this has to be an oak. Anyway, let me get a picture, and then you can say, Neil, it's actually an X. I'm going to have to make a portrait-orientated picture when really, on the show page, I try and make squares, because I'm thinking about these pictures being square. Just trying to get down this hill towards the tree. Squares, rather dark, low-key squares today because of the weather. Look at this tree. The branches that are coming from it. It's an extraordinary tree. It's had ropes and swings attached to it. I'm never going to do it justice. I really am not, but I'll get some sketchbooks. What we need really is somebody climbing the tree to give some sort of idea of scale. Scale is a very hard thing to do. And then over here, I love this in woods. We haven't even started with the letters yet. Bear with me. In the woods, when people make these shelters out of branches that have fallen. Let's get a picture of that. Looks like somebody's got a fire ready to go next to it as well. Well, I just walked into the set of something. Here we go, another one of those. F4, 1/2/5, ISO 1250. It's quite dark down in the woods today, that's for sure. Right, where should we start? From the mailbag then today. Let's start with Randy Bullerwell, one of our extra milers, actually. Now, usually I get all gooey-eyed, or perhaps the proper phrases, or pertinent phrases, is I start to salivate over Randy's life, half of it living in Aruba and the other half in Canada land, in beautiful, beautiful Nova Scotia. But for the following words today, hi Neil, hope this isn't too long a passage for the photo walk, yet I did feel the need to begin to talk about the following event. Since early June this year, I've been trying to get up the courage to return to my old neighbourhood to explore the consequences of a devastating wildfire. On May 28th earlier this year, a forest fire quickly raged out of control, and within a few days, 16,400 residents had been evacuated, and 151 homes destroyed by a fire that covered more than 800 hectares. Having just returned from my haven in Aruba, I was very quickly brought back down to earth with the news of this terrible fire, with many families and communities affected. Jump ahead 5 months, and I resolved to hike through and explore the devastation of the spring fire. I hiked into the woods toward my favourite local waterfalls, fearing that it wasn't going to be accessible, but to my surprise, the wildfire didn't hit the falls and its immediate surrounding area. From Pockwood Falls, I drove to an area near my former school to check out the hopeful recovery of a once very beautiful forest, and to my delight, there were many signs of quick regeneration. You see, Randy? Mother Nature cleaning up and clearing up behind us, as she so often does, often without a by your grace or thank you from those that leave the mess behind. All in all, says Randy, this photo walk was a very reflective, mindful and therapeutic experience. It was but one of many lessons in our lives that teaches us not to take things for granted. We never know what life has in store for us. So thank you and the photo walk for offering me a safe and friendly venue to share my story. Much appreciated. Randy, you are most welcome. This year's been quite the year, hasn't it, for devastating, raging wildfires. I mean, the vacation I took in Tenerife, I was always very aware, every single part of the day, by looking toward where the mountains usually are from the place where I was staying, and seeing a fog, a haze, a mist. And it wasn't clouds, and the smell in the air and the fact that at the same hotel, the brave firefighters, the aerial firefighters at that as well, were staying alongside us. I hope they were staying for free. They should have been. So I always think of our Photowalk brother, Cam Neville, who fights fires and photographs those who do, and the dramatic consequences of bushfires that just can't easily be stopped when the flames are being fanned. There's a misconception. I read about this only the other day. I don't know why I'd not read this fact before, even through all my research and finding out about bushfires and forest fires. But I read in National Geo only last week, or maybe the week before, that so-called rolling flames travel up to 14 miles an hour, which converts to about a 4-minute mile when you think of it in human terms. And if you add an uphill gradient into the equation, the flames can almost double in their speed. Not quite sure why that is, but reading that, I thought, that's horrific. Can you imagine that? Fighting a fire, getting to a hill and thinking, well, this is going to get even tougher. I put Randy's pictures on the show page today, and they do show Mother Nature fighting back. There's very green shoots. In fact, so much more than just green shoots of hope, as you will see. And I was looking up Pockwood Falls, actually, because I was quite taken by the place. It looks an amazing trail. I read some reviews on a walking review site. It's sort of like a TripAdvisor for trail walkers. Alltrails.com if you want to go and have a look. Liv Theroux said, super rocky terrain. Best to do this with hiking shoes and ankle support. Note taken. You have to cross the water to get to the part of the woods to get to the falls. So either you have waterproof shoes or be prepared to get very wet. Liv gave the place 4 out of 5 stars. Not so though for Matthew Edmonds, who rustled up just about midway through. Lots of washout on the road, he says, down to the falls. Back in the woods, fine. Cool to see lots of variety of mushrooms down by the water. Watch for these, though, if you bring your doggos, which made it sound like he'd had some experience of that. And I was only thinking about that about a week ago when I was up at the air base with Barnes. I know that he didn't walk with me last week when we did the photo walk. 2 weeks in a row, he'll have a proper grump with me. But I was keeping an eye out for the free roaming cattle when I was with him. But what I didn't see was Sir Barkalot showing unhealthy interest in the sizable mushrooms. Twice as large as anything I've seen, though bear in mind this was a former nuclear missile airbase with an interesting historical story of a fire once itself, actually, one that surrounded an aircraft, only this one was carrying a 1 megaton nasty. So no, it probably wouldn't have surprised me if these mushrooms were 2 or 3 times the size as norm. I'm assuming that Barnes didn't take a chomble out of them. Dogs do seem to have a 6th sense, don't they? It's only us lot that take them home thinking, oh, these look nice, I'll have them on toast with me lunch. Anyway, Randy, thank you again for these pictures. They'll be on the show page today for episode 405. And look at this place. It's a Nova Scotia gem, isn't it? That picture of yours with the blackened trees as well, standing defiantly with the bright green vegetation just beyond, just in between some of those trees, saying, come on, let's get this party started again. That was my absolute fave, so thank you for them. And I'll link to your website too for the wonderful projects in your own portfolio. Your pictures, they really do dance. I think I've said this to you before with incredible splashes of colour. And it's not actually the final time we'll hear from Randy today, because right at the end of the show, I think he sets the tone wonderfully with a postscript that, well, look, I won't say too much. The postscript today, his love letter, if you will, to photography in one sentence, is at the tail end of today's show. I've wandered right into the woodland at Bowdown Woods today. See, sometimes I'm a little bit more careful when Barnes is with me, because I do think, he's going to get all trapped in the brambles and it's stuff in his paws and it's it's proper tick season, it seems, at the moment. I know there's not necessarily a season anymore because the warmer weather sort of one collides with, the ending of one collides with the start of another, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I'm sadly I have to be a bit more careful about places like this with Sir Bark a lot these days. Although he does have the tick treatment. Anyway, if you'd like to send a letter in, such as Randy did just a moment ago, and I'm completely lost now. If I'm not out in the next couple of weeks, call somebody. Yeah, if you'd like to send in your letters to the show page, then please do, with your pictures. Pictures by email to stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show, 2,500 pixels wide, please. If you can do it, if you can optimise them and resize them, fantastic. If you can't, I'll do the heavy lifting. Please don't put borders around them while I remember, and don't include a watermark. We have a particular site style. I will make sure I do the most important thing, which is probably even better than a watermark, which is reference who you are below the photograph, and make sure that it's linked clearly to your website, your Instagram, your Flickr, or wherever you wish to send me. Look at this. Let me get a quick photo, because the sun is going in and out at the moment, and it's going to go out by the time I lift my X100. I love this when you get just splashes of light in the understory, where all around it falls to absolute nothingness, but you've got like it's a vignetted scene in many respects. It's just the understory. It's a sketchbook. It's a something and nothing. They're the pictures you make as you walk along, though, aren't they? 2 bits of feedback to the shows of late, quite recent episodes actually. And this first one, well, it was a comment actually left on the show page. And I do like to read your comments. Thank you very much for leaving them on the show page underneath. References to what you've heard on the show, sometimes the pictures that you see. And it's the sort of thing I think that, well, this one I think needs sharing, though I'm going to give you a warning. If you are eating a Garibaldi biscuit, or depending upon your time difference now, if you're having tea or dinner or lunch or breakfast or whatever you're doing at the moment, you may just need to put your fork down for a second. This is not all pleasant. From Sir Michael of Mixonville, who writes, following episode 403, there was a part of the episode where I was recounting the days of that thing that shall not be mentioned, where we used to be frightened of people even if they were 50 steps ahead in the distance. You'd dive into a bush. Neil, says Michael, your story of jumping into bushes to avoid fellow walkers during the pandemic. Oh, you said the word, Michael. You said the word. Reminded me of a similarly ridiculous thing I experienced during that time. It was right at the start of the whole ordeal, when everyone was really at peak freak-out. Now, I appreciate at this point, before I get back to Michael's missive, that some people will have had a horrific experience, but it was the human nature thing that I was talking about that Michael's picked up on here. That diving into bushes and hedges and crossing over the road to make sure you're nowhere near somebody that's ahead of you. Our house, says Michael, sits at the end of a longish gravel driveway, which itself is at the end of a small private road. So suffice to say that we don't get too many people wandering by our house, other than perhaps our neighbour with his machete. My eyebrows have raised. On this particular day, we were outside tinkering with this or that when we heard the unmistakable crunching of gravel, heralding the approach of a visitor. When we looked up, we saw a small child pedalling a little plastic car down our driveway, quickly collapsing the space between us. She clearly hadn't gotten the memo that we all needed to remain within a protective bubble of personal space. I can't hear that word bubble without thinking about that time as well. Bubble is a word truly wrecked for me. Speaking of bubbles, says Michael, as the child got closer, we could tell that she had something emanating from her nose, creating a viscous sheen on her upper lip. And normally we would have approached her and asked if she was lost, but we just stood there, frozen, watching what felt like a slow-motion film of our impending doom. This mucus-filled, pint-sized angel of death kept getting closer, and we didn't know what to do. Fortunately, though, Her mother arrived before the girl got within sneezing range and scooped up her giggling bundle of contagion, saving us all from the awkwardness of having to actually back away in fear from a phlegmy little girl. Thankfully, we've moved on from those weird times, and now I'm only ever afraid of little girls if they should twin up and invite me to walk with them in haunted hotel hallways, which of course sounds a touch suspect, unless you, like Sir Michael of Mixonville and I, are particularly partial to the sounds of "Here's Johnny" as Jack Nicholson comes through the door with an axe in The Shining. I am a bit of a super fan of Jack, actually. I did buy One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest recently, only to be really disappointed by the end. I can't remember it ending in the way that it did. I thought, no, that's not the end, is it? Did Netflix pop in and re-edit it or something? That can't be the end. That surely can't be the end. But thank you. Yes, I do understand what you mean. I saved a picture, actually, a picture or two, I think it was, that I thought I'd need one day. I'm referencing the corridors now, Michael, that you mentioned just a moment ago, with the two little girls. So, yeah, the Shining reference, since I think I sort of leapt off in another direction. The Shining reference that Michael is leaving there with the two little girls in the corridor, that's from a part of the film, a very haunting, very, very, very hair standy uppy on the back of your necky moment when the two girls that are ghosts are standing in this very, it's a very, all I can say is brownish toned corridor, very reminiscent of a hotel in the 70s, really, or perhaps the late 60s and 70s, and that's what Michael's referring to. And I kept a couple of pictures because I went to photograph a wedding in Switzerland land. I think it was literally a month, by a few days, from the moment that Boris Johnson told us in the UK, at any rate, to stay indoors. But just right at the start of the pandemic, and I stayed in this hotel with my old mate, my reprobate mate Mullins, and whenever we travel, it's become a joke now, and it always happens. I always get the really nice room, and in this particular hotel, which was this very haunted-looking hotel on the side of a lake, and nothing else around it for miles. I mean, it was like the hotel in some respects. I mean, it doesn't exactly look like it, but I shall share a picture on the show page today. There was nothing else around it for miles and miles and miles and miles. So it was, had the snow really fallen at that time, we could have safely said, oh, we're stepping into The Shining here. And the corridors, they were that sort of very bland beige, that was the word I was looking for, brownish corridors that looked just like The Shining. And I mentioned to Kev at one stage, I said, look at this corridor, Kev. I said it as I left him going to his room, which was on this particular corridor in the basement. I said, my one was lovely. It was upstairs, overlooking the lake, beautiful. Nothing like his corridor at all. I said to Kev, I said, look at this. Tell me this is not like something out of The Shining. I got a big eyebrow from Kev that day. So where were we anyway? I tell you what, since we've gone on so much about The Shining, Michael of Mixonville, thank you so much for your letter and your story. I'm glad you're okay, and I'm sure she is as well. I did say I had two bits of feedback. I'll save the other bit for later on during the show, because I'd like to, talking of films, it seems a good time actually. You don't just throw this thing together. Yes, you do, Neil. It's just luck that you went on a bit too much about The Shining. Talking of filmmaking, my guest today is a YouTuber, a photographer, and a psychotherapist with a background in psychology. I'm sure that we probably would, had I really linked this together properly, spent a moment talking about The Shining, but we didn't. My attention, though, was drawn to Karin's work a little while back by one of our extra milers, Kim Cofield, who wrote one day, an idea, Neil, for a super guest. I'd love to hear her on the show. Karin Majoka, a photographer from Germany land whose YouTube channel features film cameras. I went to have a look, loved it. was hooked so much, I must have spent hours going down various rabbit holes, consuming films, looking at imagery and so on. So I studied Karin's work, and I fired off an email immediately. She has an academic background in psychology, which is why the interface between the human psyche or psych and the arts are of special importance to her, as you'll hear. Her presence on YouTube is, I can only describe it as a wonderful, gentle, inviting journey of discovery where tuition, because her YouTube channel does involve tuition, but it coexists beautifully. It dovetails perfectly with her travels and some very personal travel stories, as you'll hear today as well. Here's part one of my conversation, two parts coming up in the show, as per norm. Part one now with Karin Majoka.
Karin, we often talk on this show about how our feelings, our emotions, our mental health have a direct correlation with the arts. And in our case, of course, we talk about photography being that connective art form. You have an academic background in psychology, and this is a rare treat for me. And you make those very same connections when you talk of photography. Has it been something that you've always championed, this idea of art and connectivity and mental health? And
I think so. To be honest, I feel like everything in this world is connected because we are in this world and we are humans and we experience everything through our filters, through our own perception. So I think there's no way to avoid seeing a connection there. And I feel like for me personally, photography, just as other creative endeavors, are just one key to get to experience myself, to get to experience my emotions, my behavior, my feelings, and with that also the world around me and other people's behaviors and feelings and so on. So I guess this is just like one gate to get to know things around you. But, a camera is a great tool to do so, but there's multiple other tools that do that as well, as, for example, talking, as, for example, other forms of art. Yeah, so I feel like it's all connected because it's, we're in this world and it's just the only way to experience it.
I must have missed the film where you explained where your photography came from. I know there's a background in Poland. I know that much, but I don't know too much about when the first camera was picked up.
Okay, that one is a little bit of a bumpy ride, I have to say. Oh. Well, basically, in the beginning, I wasn't such a big fan of photography. I kind of picked it up. I picked up a camera more or less involuntary because I was very drawn to painting and to fine arts when it comes to working with a brush or with a pencil and things like that. And to be honest, I was always a little bit skeptical when it comes to photography because I always thought that photography is the one tool that people use that, cannot do any other things when it comes to art. I know it's a little bit of
I've heard this before. Yeah. People say I can't paint, so I photograph, and it sort of belies or belittles it, which sometimes feels a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's not the case. It's just a different form of expression. But back then, I was skeptical towards photography, and I never really wanted to pick it up. But because I was so into painting, at some point I needed a way to get reference images for my paintings, and I just couldn't find them online. There wasn't like such a thing as Flickr or Pinterest that you would go to today. So I just thought, if I want to have those images that I want to paint or that I want to use as a reference, there's no way around just having to do them myself. So that was more or less the background story why I involuntarily picked up a camera. And I have to say the spark didn't came across right from the start. I picked up cameras multiple times and I just never fell in love until I finally picked up a film camera. And I think this is just where everything changed and where I saw photography as a medium that really struck my creative interest.
I wonder why the digital format didn't have the same, I'm going to use the word nostalgia. It'll be the first time I'm going to use it many times today, but the same nostalgia or feeling for you.
Yeah, that's very hard to tell for me as well. I think it's not so rational, to be honest. I think it's more emotional. I think with a film camera, the unexpected notion of it really drew me into it. And I feel like what I was lacking with digital photography, or why I was having those negative thoughts about it in the beginning, is because I never saw it as a craft that you do with your hands. And once I picked up a film camera and I started picking up film when I was also in a photography club where part of it was developing your film and doing enlargements of your photos, I think this is when I saw that it can be indeed a craft that takes like physical work to do it. And I think the whole process of it, having this response gratification, but also having the need to do something yourself, to work for it yourself. I think this is kind of what clicked for me.
There's a juxtaposition here, though, isn't there? Because your craft now involves making films, and that's not with a film camera, that's with a digital camera. How do you feel about that? Is it sort of just a means to an end, really, that particular piece of kit? or has filmmaking, in terms of video, has that become part of your craft? It obviously has, I know, by watching you work.
Oh, honestly, I think doing these YouTube videos or just like films in general on 16mm film would be the dream. If I could afford it, I would do it straight away. But for now, I guess it's just like a cost efficiency thing. Why I have to stick to digital, filming. But for me, the videos are just an extension of what I see in my creative process, because I like photography for its two-dimensionality. But I think you can convey way more if you add in the factor of storytelling, music, editing, how you cut it, color grading, and so on, which really, I never thought I would get into this in the beginning, but I found the love for it when starting the YouTube channel, and also just seeing this as an extension, as a different dimension to photography. You
started, didn't you, in around about 2020, wasn't it, when you started YouTube? So, I mean, I can see, when I've been devouring your films over the last week, and I can see an acceleration of all the senses becoming involved. I don't want to do a spoiler now, because there's a particular film from Portugal that I really want to talk about in a while. But I can see how all your senses have come alive as the more films have been made. You like to experiment, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. And first off, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that you say that, because I think this is something that I wanted to have with the channel, to have an engaging experience that is much more than just viewing the images on a screen. And I really like mixing things up. I don't like routines. I don't like having the same thing over and over again, which is why I could never just do those talking head videos that, you do the same thing just with different topics. But I kind of want to challenge myself, and I want to see the challenges in my videos as well, that no video should be like the next one, because for me, videos are like puzzle pieces. I film something, I have an idea in mind, but once I edit, I kind of need to puzzle the pieces together to make for a whole kind of picture. Yeah, so I'm very happy that hopefully transports a little bit when watching the videos as well.
It certainly does. I want to rewind a little bit, because your training as a psychotherapist, as an ongoing training, I didn't realise how long it takes. It's quite a process, isn't it? Photography and psychotherapy, I think the idea is that you're going to, well, not necessarily marry the two together, but they're going to coexist, aren't they?
Well, how I see it is that they kind of use more or less a same skill or a same muscle, I would say, mentally. So my background is that I'm currently a psychotherapist in training, but the base of that is that I have a degree in psychology. So without the clinical element being part of it, just the whole idea of understanding humans and analyzing behavior is one thing. So what I, for example, wrote my thesis on was creativity. And I think creativity is kind of the link between photography and psychotherapy for me, because how I see creativity, or how literature sees creativity, is that creativity is actually something like a muscle to do new things, novel things over and over again, to not get stuck with the same ruts, but try to use different solutions for the same problem, for example. And I think like in psychotherapy, I have patients with the same diagnosis. I have patients who have an anxiety disorder, but no patient is the same as the one before, but everybody is different. And I have a toolbox, but I cannot use the toolbox the same way for every person, right? So what I actually have to do is stretch my creative muscle and see how I can approach this specific individual with his or her specific needs, and see how I can kind of adjust my tools to it. And I feel photography pretty much does that in the same way. I have different situations. I have maybe different things I want to portray. But even though I might have the same camera with me, the same tool, it doesn't perform the same way in every situation. So I need to utilize my brain and my knowledge to see how I could make the best out of the situation. You know what I mean? And I feel like this is kind of the link that I just try to come up with new ideas in whatever context I get thrown in.
I think we covered this in last week's show, that using a camera, having a camera, going out and photographing is something that doctors are now beginning to actually prescribe.
Yeah, and honestly, it makes sense. It makes 100% sense, because one of the key elements of how we, for example, see mental health is that mental health causes a change in our behavior and our thinking and our emotions. So it's kind of a downward spiral that once we, for example, feel bad, then we maybe go, isolate ourselves. We don't meet so many people. Then we have bad thoughts because we have more time to do more thinking and so on. And then we kind of end up down there. And so what we kind of need to do is to break the downward spiral and make it into an upward spiral. And if we think about it, what's easiest to change? Can we change our thoughts, our emotions, or our behavior the easiest? Then obviously behavior probably is the easiest, because we cannot just, turn a switch and say, I'm not sad anymore. Let me just be happy. If that worked, then I wouldn't need a job in that case anymore. So what we actually should do is to try to do different things, to do different behaviors, and do things that, kind of feel good. And so photography, taking a camera, going outside, having fresh air, having to move is something that honestly I think is very, very good medicine.
I wonder if there's a correlation too with your filmmaking as starting a YouTube channel, or perhaps I'm reading too much into this, because it started in 2020. 2020 for pretty much all of us was with all our own stories about that particular period, was a time where we really had to dig deep mentally. And I wonder if there's a correlation with you starting a new creative process in 2020 with the pandemic happening.
Yeah, I think it's a multitude of things. First off, I'm basically a street photographer who likes to take images of interactions of people on the street. And that was simply what was lacking in 2020. Oh, right. So I knew that I needed some other kind of way of expressing myself. And also during that time, I had a little bit more free time because with my job, I was transferred to a different unit, and there we were preparing for COVID cases. But then in the end, there weren't so many people coming as we expected. So I had a little bit more time at my hands that I didn't account for. So it kind of was both things, needing a different creative outlet, but also having more time to finally try something else that I wanted to try for so long.
What genre would you say you are? I mean, are you do street work? Are you a street photographer? Are you, because there's plenty of superb abstract work within what you do as well. Are you an abstract photographer? What genre do you champion, if indeed you do?
Do you feel like we need those categories, or do you think like we need to kind of categorize ourselves? Because honestly, this is something that I've been struggling with, because I do like a multitude of things and a little bit of everything in a way, because I like the change, I like the challenge, and I like to dabble in a lot of things. But that actually makes it hard to put like a label on it. Yeah. And for the most part, I think, I'm a human photographer. Maybe that's kind of what connects it all, because street photography is where I portray humans. Portraits is where I portray humans, but also just empty spaces are kind of also human portraits as well, because we have like an idea of solitude, of loneliness, even without showing people. So I guess that's kind of the connection with it. But putting a label on it honestly has been like, something that I've been struggling with.
Let's talk about your work on YouTube. Your films have a beautiful, gentle flow. And I think that has to be a reason why viewers feel they have quite a personal connection with you. As I look down the comments that you receive in your films or after your films, starting a channel is one thing, knowing how to find a style is another. Do you have a style? I mean, we've already identified that perhaps you don't, because you like every single film to be different. How do you navigate finding a style on a social media platform like YouTube, which is all about, you would think, certainly looking at photography channels, finding a style?
Oh, that is such a good question. Honestly, I think that this is still something that I haven't arrived there yet, but I think I kind of gravitate towards the idea that style doesn't have to be something purely visual, because what a lot of people expect, for example, when you browse through Instagram, that your feed looks all the same, all neatly in the same color way, and your videos have like the same thumbnail, so everybody knows that this is you, right? And I feel like this is kind of a superficial connection. that we kind of get trapped by, that we need this style that's purely like a visual connection. And for me personally, I try to not follow this rule too much, because it would kind of bend who I really am, because I'm not only this one style, because I have different facets to me. And I think this is something that I also want to show in my work. So I feel like the connecting point, and I hope that this doesn't sound like egoistic, I don't mean it in that way, but I think the connecting point is me as a person again, where we're talking about humans. So I feel that this should be more or less enough as a style, because I don't want to have like a superficial connection to things, but I want to go a little bit deeper. And if that's me, that I don't like to do the same thing over and over again, I guess that could maybe be a style. But I honestly, I think this is a question that I would love to mirror to some of the people who actually watch the channel, because maybe they have a better answer than I do. Because honestly, as you're probably seeing, it's not so easy to put into words.
Well, gentle, if these are style words, I suppose, gentle, inviting, they're the kind of words that I find when I'm watching your films in particular. Now that I'm subscribed, now that I'm subscribed to your channel, you don't do that. There's no liking and subscribing going on at the end. Not in the style that we're quite used to YouTubers working in these days.
No,
anyway.
not so much.
No, it's not really you. There are certain films which will always be more successful if success is measured simply by download numbers. So kit films, they're clearly more successful. You get bigger numbers for them. They go to the top of the pile with YouTube usually, because it's a very searchable thing. What do you prefer to make?
Well, I think the videos that I like to make the most are probably the less successful ones, honestly, which just is how it is. But the ones that I like to make are the more personal ones. As for example, I made like travel videos, as the one you already mentioned about my Portugal trip. Yeah. I have a video about my journey to Poland, which is more or less my home country that I haven't visited for nearly 10 years, and then going back after 10 years. And I think these are things that are not easily transported as content. These are not things that people usually click, because if they see a camera review, they would much rather watch this than a woman returning to her home country 10 years later. You know what I mean? So yeah, these are the videos that I like to make the most, because they mean the most to me and because they are the most personal ones. And even though I know that they are not the most clickbaity things, I think I will never stop making them, because these are the essence of what I want to do, basically.
Well, I'm going to come back to the Polish trip in particular. I did check your most popular titles, though, having said that. The beer can pinhole camera. What is not to like about that? Now, making pinhole cameras from weird and wonderful things we've talked about on this program before. We've had guests that have made them out of blocks of cheese and all kinds of stuff. But your beer can pinhole was a very long tail project. But I mean, I don't want to ruin it for anybody that's about to go and look at the film, because I'm going to leave a link for it on today's show page. But explain why it was so long, this project.
Well, as you mentioned, pinholes can have different forms and different aims and goals. And you could also make the pinhole super massive and think about long exposures. And what I tried in the video is doing a super long exposure with a pinhole camera that actually lasted for one entire year. And instead of just kind of capturing what you see in front of you, this type of pinhole camera, which by the way is super easy to build, so it's nothing like crazy, but everybody can do it basically. But this type of pinhole camera does take an image of the entire sun trail that the sun is, making over the time of 1 year, which means that, for example, in an area like where we live in Europe, where you have like seasonal changes, also the height and the length of the sun changes. Which I think is just a fun project if you want to do something completely different with pinhole camera than what you're used to, because it's almost like an astrology image more than just a photograph.
That's what I thought. I thought that looks like an astro project to me. It was it was fantastic. What's the best beer can for it? I don't. Did you find particular? I saw you in the film sitting there with half a glass of beer with your beer can pinhole camera, and I was trying to see what the brand program was, I was thinking, has Karin used a German beer? Are they clearly the best for pinhole camera projects? I don't know.
Well, I could say that maybe I had. Well, that would be a nice field study to actually try out which beer can works the best for this kind of beer pinhole camera project. But I guess that would probably damage your liver over time a little bit.
Probably.
But I have to say the larger cans. There's like different can sizes. In Germany, we mostly have like smaller cans, but there's a few that are bigger. So it's like the 0.5 liter cans, not the smaller 0.33 liter cans. So whatever beer you find in the larger cans should usually be fine. And sometimes it also helps to enjoy it beforehand, to be creative enough to execute the idea. Absolutely. But as I said, it's really easy. You don't need to drink a beer to build a pinhole camera.
Maybe not, no. Particularly if you're going outside to mount the beer can pinhole apparatus on the side of your house, one floor up, leaning out of a bedroom window, as you will see in the film, which is on the show page today. The rain actually just a moment ago during Karin's interview, it really came down. It's left us with beautiful. I mean, it was lush when I came in, so I'm not sure it's any different. Maybe my eyes are seeing more green, or in a greener sense, than they were when I stepped into the woods about an hour ago to start making this walk. But look at this tree. Look at it. I don't know, Neil. I can't see out the other side. Yes, you can. I'll make a picture and put it on the show page. I don't know what this is, and I did actually try to look it up on my nature app, but I got nowhere close to understanding what the tree actually is. It's been dead for a long, long time. But it's almost like somebody grabbed the trunk and then twisted it round. It's weird. It's like, again, we're in movie land with this one. Let me get a picture. Now, it's the other side of a fence, which is private property. And I'm wondering whether to step in, but I think, hang on. I think you'll see it by this picture anyway. Here we go, look. Let's get a photograph of that. I've got one. And I want to step in. Somebody's handily, and I'll prove it by taking a picture in case you say, no, they didn't, Neil, has put a branch, or maybe the branch has fallen on the fence, which has pulled the fence down to such an extent that I'm not going to do myself any damage that may change my voice in the next 10, 15 minutes or so. There we go. Look, I'm stepping into the land that I shouldn't be. Probably stepping on all sorts of stuff here. That I shouldn't be stepping on in terms of some sort of warning back to whoever owns this property. Oh, somebody stepped in. The pressure plates have been stepped on. I want to get a picture. I want to get close. Hold on. I want to get really close to get this fabulous texture of this tree. It really does look, I mean, it looks like it's been, honestly, somebody's grabbed hold of it and twisted it round. There's a branch that's sort of, I'm going to push that out the way, gardening, as Mally Davis calls it, our friend Mally Davis, when you're just changing a few things in the photograph, just pushed a branch out the way so it's not obscuring this fabulous bark. Look at it. Look at that. Right, let's get back. Let me step back into the land that I'm supposed to be in. Here we go. Oh, it's a bit... it's a bit of a drop the other side of the fence. It's okay. I'm all right. Right, where were we? Yes, Karin will be back for part 2. And we talk in a short while when she returns. And without wishing for too much of a spoiler now, it's without doubt one of the best, in my humble opinion, travel films. We talk about it, her travel film that is, that I've seen it. I mean, it sort of doubles as an all-round beautiful hit on the senses because there's poetry in it. So there's words, you know I like my sound. There's sound in it too, the sound of the place she visits. I mean, it really, with the poetry and with the film, the gentle filmmaking, it really struck a chord with me, as you're hearing. And the rain's falling. Oh, all down my back. But sound in films and sound with photographs, it doesn't have to be just music, you know, when you're making a film with your photographs. I mean, it could be the sound of a dawn chorus, the lapping water on a shore. When I first walked in the woodland earlier on, the birds were really, the rain sort of chased them away a bit, I think. They've all sort of hunkered down. But the birds, when I first walked in here earlier, were lovely. Now, unfortunately, there's a circling plane, circling light aircraft, which I was thinking, surely you're going to go in now, aren't you? Rain, stop, play for you, surely. We'll just have to put up with that. But the lapping water on a shore, the birds in the trees, or trees just moving with wind is another thing I love. I'm a soft old sausage when it comes to that. There was a movie called, have you ever seen Phenomenon? I know I'm digressing quite a lot today. I do this when I'm in Woodland, just walking. Have you ever seen Phenomenon? It's one of John Travolta's, what would we say, least known films? Because I think it's brilliant. I know it didn't seem to do the box office thing that John Travolta usually does, but it's a beautiful film. I really think it is, and it's one of his least recognised films. Let's just call it that. There's a part in the movie, and I know we're talking about moving images here, not still images, but there's a part. It's 2 occasions, I think, possibly 3, where trees alone set the tone of an entire scene in a film. The one that I tell you what, I'll find a link for it. There will be one, I'm sure. It's he's doing something cultivating a garden, digging in a garden, and John, who plays this character called George Malley, he seems to be called. And it happens in a much more emotional scene later on as well. And if I find that one, I will. But he seems to be called by these trees that are rustling. He looks up, and it's almost like the trees are talking to him. And for all sorts of reasons, this film is something to do with his health. It's just beautiful. Really, I will find some links or a link. And if you can go and see the film, Phenomenon, well, let me know. It might be... Neil, that Phenomenon film, not one of your greatest suggestions. Or it might be, Neil, oh, what a movie. It's changed me. Anyway, I still think of it now, but particularly when I'm in forestry and looking up. See, I'm looking up now. Photographs where you look up in the air to tell the story of the day. Today's will be a rather blur sky at times. And though, I tell you what, though this might sound like I'm shoehorning in the next rather more commercial mention of something, there is an authenticity in me talking about sound, because it's something I'm going to be mentoring on the forthcoming retreats. We have, now on our retreat to Scotland, we have just one place left. And I'm not sure by the time I go to edit and put this show out whether that may have gone as well, but there's just one place left, and that's, we opened it up a bit more this year to have one extra place. So there's one more place remaining in Scotland. Go to photowalkscotland.show or follow the link on the menu in the website or on the website, photowalk.show, and that'll take you there as well. If you'd like to come, one more place remaining, and we'll be talking about sound. We'll be making photographs to go with the sounds that we record. And I guess in some respects it might tie into a bit of forest bathing as well, where you bathe in the forest and the sounds. And for one moment, this Herbert here, i.e. me, will go silent whilst we record the sounds of what's around us. But I'd also like to mention our trip to Africa, if you don't mind. I'll be recording a video for our extra milers and in sound for a full podcast show, 2 episodes across 10 days of our adventure there. We are off for a retreat and expedition, an all-in-one exciting adventure to the smiling coast of Africa, the Gambia. We're going to be spending time with the people of this wonderful, extremely friendly country. And the reason for linking all this with sound again, well, the sound, the dawn chorus in particular, the river that we'll be travelling along, I tell you what, the markets that we walk in to make our photographs are these fantastic, bustling, so colourful in every way, in pictures and sound, markets of the Gambia. We're going to be making stories in those And whatever sound of this amazing country we can gather will then be making it a part of our individual records of the time that we all spend away together in the Gambia and Scotland as well. But the Gambia for those sounds that I'm talking about now. In many ways, and this could sound like a grand statement, I'm hoping it may become another string to an incredible bow. Is that the right phrase for those coming along in terms of their storytelling in the future? One super place, as I said, to record sound is in the markets. And I'd like to play you just a couple of words from Jason Florio, who's one of our guides on this particular expedition. And he gives a mention, more than just a glancing mention, to the sounds of these wonderful places where we're going to be making our photographic stories.
Tell me about the markets. I love the markets. For me, that yielded probably some of my favourite photographs from the visits I've made to the Gambia. I use this phrase such a lot, and I'm not going to make an excuse for using it again. But you see the whole of the country, the whole of Gambia in one market quite often, don't you?
Yeah, the markets for sure are. I mean, the word vibrant seems sort of lacking, as they are. They are sort of incredible places, and as talking of sound, the sort of cacophony of the market traders, the buyers, the bleating of sheep. The colour obviously is exceptional there. I mean, everyone is, especially all the vendors are often females, so beautifully attired in their wax print fabrics. And there's such a sort of a mixture. There's obviously all your kind of daily buys, your fruit and your veg, and fish. But there's also just the household stuff as well, and it's just amazing what sort of things you can find. And I love some of the more offbeat shops which are selling potions and remedies of all sorts. It's an endless dive, I think, into the markets. There's always something around one corner or another, and it's great just to chat to people there as well. I mean, I love. Often before even taking pictures, we're sort of have a good chat, buy a couple of bits and pieces, and just sort of I feel like you float through the market. You're almost like sort of carried on a wave of people. Yeah. So it's just great. You've got to be open-minded and just let yourself get lost. I think that's the kind of the beauty of those places. And I've been to probably most of the major markets in Gambia with Helen, and there's always something new there that you find. There's another little shop hidden away, some other little gem selling some amazing fabrics, which Helen somehow conveniently gravitates towards.
It's the Photowalk, a show for hikers and walkers and photographers of whatever kind, an experience, a show for those who find escapism and peace away from the noise of that blooming aircraft pilot that's above me at the moment, who has found obviously a break in the rain, and he's decided to try his looping the loopies for the next. He normally does it for about 15-20 minutes. I just want to talk to you. I suppose I could turn the record. Is that getting on your nerves, Mr. Loopy Looper above us? It's getting on mine. He lives reasonably locally, and he keeps his plane out at Brimpton Aerodrome, which I think we've walked past or through before, haven't we? On a photo walk, and he sometimes takes this thing out for a jaunt, and then you just hear for 15 minutes, oh, yeah, oh. It's like a mantra, but not a very pleasant mantra. Anyway, I was going to say, a show for those who find escapism and peace away from the noise of this world, putting miles under our feet and making a picture or three to remind us of where those footprints were left. And I'm still trying to find my way back to the track at the moment. The assignment page is up, by the way, so go to the website and look for the assignments tab. Only 2 more weeks to take part in this. We're looking for a portrait which is about football or about soccer. And actually, there are many forms of football. An Australian rules football photograph has made its way onto the assignments page. Good, because I should have mentioned that one as well. So it's a portrait about the sport of football. Right. Should we do some postcards? I've got some postcards with me, but I don't want to do it with that thing going over me over and over and over. I tell you what, let me walk a bit further into the woodland, make some photographs, which I can put on the show page, and I'll wait for him to run out of fuel. Obviously not to devastating effect, clearly. Just so that he looks at it and thinks, oh, I've got to land now. And, foot disappeared into a quagmire there. Right, speak to you in a moment. We'll dig through some postcards. Because of the sound of the plane clearly agitating me, I entirely forgot that I should mention there is obviously a web page for the Gambian retreat as well, and it is photowalkgambia.show. So we have photowalkscotland.show, one place left, and photowalkgambia.show, 3 places left on that particular visit. I keep coming across these amazing trees, just incredible. Really, and squirrels too. He's never going to get close enough for a cutesy picture. I managed to get one in. I was doing a wedding. Where was I? I was in London somewhere, and they were very, very tame. They were coming right up to the camera. I thought, that's not really sport, is it? When, with a effective 35mm focal length, you can photograph a squirrel, fill it full frame, without needing to punch in at all on that picture. So, I've mentioned the Gambian show page now, and I'd love to hear from you. If you've been thinking over the last couple of weeks, it does sound interesting, maybe I'll write to Neil and get, because I'm happy to talk about it, get a few more details about it, because I know it's not in everybody's backyard. That's what makes it such the adventure. Right, postcards, wish you were here postcards. We've got a couple here, actually. The first from Colin Mayer in Australia land. Neil spent the morning wandering aimlessly. That's the best way to do it, isn't it? Around the local streets of Melbourne, listening to the show. You need to keep your eyes open to avoid getting hit by a tram, he says. Yes, please do that. Not get hit by a tram. Keep your eyes open. There's clothes shops, he says, sushi shops and coffee shops everywhere, yet I find myself lost at the end of the world. Wish you were here, Colin Mayer. Now, I should explain this. The postcard, which is on the show page today, it's a wonderful, low-key, dark, foreboding in many respects, photograph. You know I love those sort of pictures. They're right up my alley, and this is an alley, so it's an alley in every single respect, where the foreboding word end greets the eye after you've filtered your eye up and along and past the dumpsters and a discarded cherry picker, by the looks of it, of this alleyway. See, Colin? If I could rub the legs at the moment in an appropriate fashion, I would. But this does fit into the category of the classic postcards of why, never mind end, but why. The same category as Slough Railway Station circa 1974 taken across a car park. And that's why I love it, your photograph. It's a postcard and a non-postcard, all at the same time. It's on the show page, deservedly so. Another one then, I said to another postcard. This one is from David Higton. Now, usually, I don't like you to send in pictures that feature different fonts, and we arrange sort of single or multiple pictures that go with the style of the page. So when you send something in that's already been designed into a postcard with what one might call I hope I can use this word, a flouncy font? Can I use that word in 2023? Straight 2024? Yeah, I think you're all right, Neil. Okay. But usually I don't. I sort of rearrange, but I'm keeping yours because I think it fits into the same category. I love this, I really do. The same category as Slough Railway Station, circa 1974, photograph taken across a car park. I purposefully have elected to use that as an example because your postcard has, not just loosely, something to do, well, it's a pilgrimage to a railway enthusiasts meetup. Dear Neil, says David, managed a day trip to Chesterland on Tuesday to have a look at the Pete Waterman Making Tracks 3 model railway display. Catchy title, at Chester Cathedral. Very impressive, 64 feet long, and saw some interesting people. Wandered around, and took in the town crier at noon. That's a very English thing. I don't think town crier. Do town criers exist in other countries, or is it uniquely a kind of English or perhaps British thing? Followed by a pint and a cheese and pickle sandwich. This day's sounding better all the time, David. At a pub nearby the river, had a Cornish ice cream. What, in Chester? In Chesterland, a Cornish ice cream. By the river, watching the boats before heading back along the city walls. There were some interesting people around. Weather held good, or not like here, the rain's falling. Can you hear it? With a parrot in the background somewhere, by the sound of it. What, here? The weather held good and the train home was punctual, although Crewe Station always feels a bit cold and drafty to me. Bill and Mike say hi. Hi, Bill. Hi, Mike. Wish you were here, David. Brilliant, and perfectly, as I say, in keeping with the Slough railway station circa 1974 photograph taken across a car park. Love the picture, David, and you'll see this on the show page today, within Dave's, can I call you Dave? Within Dave's postcard. Love the picture of the folks on a bench looking perfectly gloomy. The chap in the middle of the four sat down. He's the one that's got the hat on. He's got that wistful look of somebody a million miles away, somebody who's wishing he wasn't there, not that he was there by the looks of it. So some perfect street work in there. Really, it is, with the four pictures that you've arranged. And when it comes to the railway, model railway exhibition, you took a portrait picture in there, and there's a character there, Sarah, her name is. I can see it because she's got a name badge on the front of her tunic. The green-haired railway modeller, you see? All characters within that fantastic community. And I know people sometimes think of railway modelling as, well, it does rather get unfairly put into the category of sort of people you might avoid in a pub. But no, railway modelling is something that the most unexpected stars do as well. Tom Hanks, there we go, Tom Hanks and Michael Jordan, both very keen railway model enthusiasts. Although, to be fair, I would imagine I'm assuming they live in houses that have plenty of land, they could probably have the real thing as well, and actually have trains that make their way to the real Grand Central Station. But so the most incredible people are involved in it. It's a wonderful hobby. It's a very gentle hobby. And I think in many respects, those who do it, it's almost like that escapism to another world, isn't it? We do it with our photography, don't we? We make our pictures, look through our eyepieces, and we're in another world. We escape. There's an escapism involved looking through the eyepiece of a camera. And I think with the small towns and the cities, sometimes, perfectly crafted to be a replica of a real place. But often you find, these worlds that people have made themselves that, a bit like being in the eyepiece, they sort of, I don't know, teleport themselves into these tiny places that they build. I find it fascinating anyway. And thank you, David. Thank you. I love the card. It's on the show page, complete with swirly writing for the wish you were here. It's the swirly font that usually brings me out in hives, but I have to say, on this occasion, absolutely perfect. Now this is interesting. Let me get a picture of it, and I'll hopefully the picture will be clear enough that I can link to it later on, and we might be able to listen to it together. Let me get a close-up of it. It's a QR code for what is an audio trail. I don't know what's on the audio trail, what sort of sounds you hear, whether it's the sounds of nature, which I assume it probably is. It's an audio trail and I'm in a nature reserve, so yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Your postcards are brilliant. And if you'd like to send one in, I'll have an email address for you in just a moment's time. Try to include the amount of text that you would usually include in a postcard. Not so much that I would, if it were a real postcard in Benidorm, well, Benidorm comes to mind, that I would need a macro lens just to be able to read the writing because it was so small, there were so many words. And then it's very authentic, as they would say, in the East End of London. That's terrible, I appreciate that for East Enders. It would be authentic. Look at this, look. Now, I was talking today about making black and white pictures and putting them into squares because it felt that kind of day, but the autumnal colours now, the ferns turn, well, these have turned, they're turning all the way, so you get this lovely carpet of these brown and red tones that are forming, and in the background there, it's got a bat box on it as well, I think, this wonderful tree that's just being kissed on one side by this sunlight that's unexpectedly treating us to weather I wasn't expecting today. Let me get a picture. Oh, I've got 1 bar of battery left. That doesn't bode well. And as I'm talking to you, it's gone red. The red of doom. I might not be making many more sketchbook images today, but I've certainly made a few for the show page today. So, send your postcards in to the email address stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show, and if you can optimize your pictures to 2,500 pixels wide, that would be fantastic. Don't worry if you can't though, because I don't need to do the rest of the sentence, do I? I'll look after it. Oh, go on, Neil, say it. All right, I'll do the heavy lifting. As I was wandering along today, I was thinking now, whenever I teach communication, which I do actually, slight advert to those that listen for the corporate environment, I have been known to teach communication and speech skills, recording skills and stuff like that. Not for a while, actually. I keep meaning to put something together to do a little bit more because it's something I enjoy doing. But one thing I say, and particularly when it comes to radio training, and funnily enough, the training I do for those that want to work in radio, when it comes to communication, piecing together scripts, thoughts, links, and that kind of thing, is very similar to the training work I do when I'm teaching people in a corporate environment to piece together a speech or a talk that they're about to do. And that is, put it into sections, as I do. That's what a letter is, essentially. It's a section, isn't it? Break it up somehow, different ways to do that. I break it up with music. But overall, try to work with one thought per link or section, if you like. Yes, you can sort of deviate as you go along, but I feel today I've deviated quite a lot. When I listen back, I think I'm going to be tutting at myself. So hopefully you've learned to bear with me today. Note to self. I haven't done a note to self for a few weeks now. Note to self. One thought, one link. Calm down. Slow down. Don't confuse people. And my other listener, well, they're very easy to confuse, as you well know. Not you, them. Now, there's no show next Friday. It's school vacation week, and I've promised to keep laptop time to an absolute minimum. But I will be releasing for Extra Milers an episode for you as a thank you for your support, and it's the, looking ahead a week now, the second part of a two-parter with one of our Extra Milers who starts talking with us today, Mike of Millerland. You know Mike. Of course you do. And in the first one today, he talks to me about, I suppose how a just say yes policy in his life got him into trouble. I say trouble with a very small lowercase t, because actually it was something that's opened up a bit of a photographic adventure for him. But next week, in the second part of our conversation, which you'll be able to listen to when there isn't a Friday photo walk, next week there'll be a conversation where he talks to me about making photographs on the move, something which has got me I know we make photographs on the move anyway, but being a Google guide is something that he talks to me about, and it's got me unnecessarily excited. I think I may have inadvertently hit upon a way commercially of using Google a little more cutely, if that's the phrase. but also, and better than that, is perhaps started a bit of a hobby for me. After my conversation with Mike, I dropped him a letter and say, thanks, Mike, for having a chat. I can't tell you how excited I am following our conversation and the ideas that you've imparted. And we were talking about making pictures of the places you visit and then what you do with the pictures afterwards. I know that sounds a bit cryptic. It's on next Friday's Extra Mile, and honestly, it's very much changed the way that I've thought about some of the photographs that I make when I'm out and about, because I share them on the show page, I do, and then they kind of go into, well, they live in a folder. Now, part of that folder is this a gate I can get through? Am I allowed in here? I think I am. Part of that folder is going to be used for my new book project that's coming up, the Book of Why, which I'm working on in November. It's pretty much there, actually. Funnily enough, this particular one. But this conversation that I had with Mike has opened up a world of other possibilities with the photographs that you make while you're on your adventures. Anyway, I'll say no more, because otherwise I'm going to end up doing a spoiler. And I know you'll enjoy that Extra Mile episode next week. Right, I have to change tone entirely now. Here's some feedback from last week's show. Now, last week's show featured a friend of mine who'd worked on a peace ship in the Mediterranean off the coast of Israel. And it was called The Voice of Peace. So it was a nod, no, more than a nod really, to, of course, the desperate situation that's going on in the world. And I say a nod because we didn't involve a photojournalist that was on the ground there. I suspected they would all be rather involved in other business and not have necessarily the enthusiasm or the understanding to talk to a Photowalk podcast. So I decided to do a program about peace, and that's why the episode was called The Voice of Peace. So this letter is from Harold Carlis, first-time writer, and usually right now I would be hiding behind the imaginary sofa on this trail with the flattery that he's about to lend us. But there's a deeper message, I think, within Harold's words. Dear Neil, your podcasts are a weekly retreat in which I manage to escape my daily challenges. Not pure escapism, but an opportunity to intentionally think about other things and specifically help me develop my image making beyond purely technical aspects, which seem to have dominated my efforts, he says, over the last 5 decades. Enter a parallel world, as it were. In my younger days, says Harold, I was very politically aware, beyond party politics, trying to understand all sides and events in historic context. It was driven very much by my father, who served in the German military during World War II and increasingly became alienated by ideology. Add to that, growing up in South Africa as a white middle-class kid under apartheid, I learned to seek meaning beyond the obvious. And by the way, in those days, there was no television in South Africa, so the sole source of entertainment, information, and, if you like, enlightenment, was radio. And whilst the South African Broadcasting Corporation provided entertainment, deeper understanding of current affairs was only really to be had on shortwave. Remember that? Shortwave. BBC World Service, Voice of America, and of course Deutsche Welle. Each had their own bias, but listening to a broad range sort of averaged this out, and I at least felt well informed. In my later years, and up to the present now, world events made me anxious and started to affect my mental well-being. So for my own good, I virtually stopped following current affairs from a feeling of not being able to make any kind of difference. So imagine my utter shock when I realized that in episode 404, you started addressing the horrific events of the week which haunt me. My place of retreat had been sullied. It was only my deep respect for you as a person and your work that stopped me from discontinuing listening at that moment. But as I listened to your thoughts, well expressed, and listening to the story of the radio station somewhere in the Mediterranean and its charismatic founder, I felt an urge to rejoin the world and once again seek deeper understanding in an attempt not to change the world, but once again try to make sense of the apparently senseless. So for that, I thank you deeply. He says, I do also have thoughts on photography, but we'll leave that for another day. Best wishes from Stuttgart in Germany. Harold, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I suppose I really wanted to make sure I did it properly. And there was a worry, there was a concern that that somehow I wasn't going to achieve that. But going by your words, Harold, and hopefully other people agree, then certainly the conversation about that peace ship in the Middle East, no longer there now. And I'm sure A.B. Nathan, who was the founder, this humanitarian, would right now be wanting to float the MV Peace. That's what the ship was called, the Voice of Peace. I'm sure he'd want to be broadcasting from the loudest transmitter he could find, bringing together the voices of those who generally weren't joined together in that region. So thank you so much for your feedback for last week's episode. If you haven't heard the episode, then maybe that will give you an idea of what's to come. Right then, part 2 of our conversation with Karin Majoka, and in this part I talk a little more with her about making personal projects, the reason behind making pictures for you with a capital Y and a capital O and U. Not for somebody else, but for you. And I recommend you go to the show page today to see some of Karin's work and follow the links to her website. So let's start with talking about a film that I watched and then watched and rewatched on top of the rewatch, because it says everything to me about quiet filmmaking. Here's Karin. It is Karin. I haven't just become East End again. Karin Majoka talking about a film made on her travels that I have to say has inspired me to do the same sort of thing.
I love Portugal on 35mm film. That's the title of the film. And I will make a link to that as well. It starts out with something that really captures, well, my heart, which is the sounds of a place. Whilst we click through, or you click through some stills. But then you voice a poem by Fernando Pessoa, a Portuguese poet and thinker who I'd not heard of before. So I went away and had a good dive down the rabbit hole, as it were, to find out much more about him. I have within me a haze is the piece of poetry. It's a 4-minute, 40-second film, which for me is really all about getting to know somebody, and that's you. This frankly is visual poetry. It really is. How do you piece your films together creatively? I mean, are you a storyboarder?
I guess it really differs from film to film how my approach is. For this video in particular, I wanted to go with the feeling and the flow that I capture once being there. So there are a lot of videos where I kind of come up with a story beforehand, where I storyboard or where I write a script before executing the idea. But with some videos, it doesn't work because I cannot know beforehand how my experience will be. And with this video about Portugal, I knew that the feeling and the idea of the video has to come with my experience. So once I was there and once I knew what kind of feeling I wanted to convey, then I kind of knew that I want to focus on sounds, want to focus on the visual elements, as for example, the beautiful sundowns in Portugal, and also capture something that's local that touched me while I was there. And I did like a walking tour when I was in Lisbon and in Porto, and we also visited one of the oldest libraries that there is. And there I found a book by Fernando Pessoa, which is called The Book of Disquiet. Yep. Beautiful book. Yep. Can definitely recommend. And I feel like this kind of local connection to the place later became the idea of how I want to translate my experience.
Also, though, there were his words, all the world is a great open book that smiles at me in an unknown tongue. It's an amazing pursuit, photography, isn't it? Because it is a passport to curiosity. Do you think you're more curious because of photography? Is holding a camera in front of your eye, has that become a passport to seeing more?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I never thought about it in this way. I feel like correlation is not causation. So I'm not sure which direction it really is. If maybe the curiosity is there and this is why, I pick up a camera, or if the curiosity comes because I have a camera in my hand and I want to explore more. Probably it's just a little bit of both.
Here's something that caught my eye as well. Photograph your past in the present. Often one of the mantras I certainly repeat is what you photograph today will be the nostalgia of the future. But this is the film where you return to to your home. You returned to your past to photograph it in the present. How did that feel?
Oh, honestly, for me, it was like an emotional roller coaster because it was such a different experience in so many ways, because I wasn't there on my own, but I was there with my family, with my parents and with my sister, like a constellation that we haven't really done holidays in many, many years. So now being a grown up, being on holidays with my parents again was one dimension to the whole experience, but also seeing my family being in Poland after not seeing them for almost 10 years was also an experience, because there's such a big gap between what you experienced in life and what they have been experiencing in life. So kind of finding each other again was very emotionally challenging, I would say. And also the whole photography aspect to it was, I think it's very hard to describe into words, because these were the places of my childhood. These were places that I used to go to, where my parents used to take film photos of me. And now being on the other side, being in a reversed position where I'm now here as a grown-up, being able to revisit the spots that have changed so much was very, very intense. So I feel like there were times where I was kind of sad that I didn't manage to go back sooner. But now in hindsight, I think it was even the right way to wait it out for so long, because the experience was so intense that I probably wouldn't have had if I revisited every year.
One of the parts that sort of grabbed me, and you've certainly enthused me to go and make a similar journey, actually, one that I've been planning to make for a while, was when you went to the playground where you used to play as a child.
Well, before there wasn't really a playground. Now I was sitting at the playground, but before it was just like stones and just like trees that were cut, that were kind of made in a DIY playground, but now it was a proper playground. So it had
changed. So I had this idea that it hadn't changed. Isn't that funny? I saw it through very different, almost melancholic eyes when I've returned to places where I've looked at them and thought, well, it's not changed. I've just got older.
I mean, there's always some aspects that don't change. I feel like the smell you have, for example, even though it's just a playground somewhere in the middle of nowhere, it still kind of smells differently than the playgrounds I have around here. I guess that's also just because my brain connects it in a nostalgic way that probably isn't there. But so some things haven't changed indeed. But some things have. And I think exactly this clash of things that changed and things that didn't change is something that's very, very emotional to process. But I would be interested, if you want to talk about it, what kind of project would it be for you that you would like to revisit? Where would you like to photograph your past and the present?
Schools. Definitely schools. There's two schools. I've revisited one, and the melancholy that I mentioned came from that one revisit I made to my senior school or secondary school. I'm not quite sure what it is in German, but I remember walking down this brick corridor, these glazed bricks of an almost Victorian kind of school, really. Nothing had changed. And I went into the loo, but I remember looking at myself in the mirror thinking, the school's not changed, but I have. And that was quite a melancholic feeling. Even the A board that was further down I went in the summer, it was further down the corridor, and it had a message on it saying silence, exams in progress. Now, of course, it won't be the same words as were there when I was at school, but I'm pretty sure it was the same A board. Nothing had changed.
Oh, I guess that is probably, when everything stayed the same, but just time has passed. And then you kind of realize that time has passed on you as well, seeing yourself in the mirror. I guess that is also like quite a different experience, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I want to go even further back and go to the infants and junior school, which is still standing. Same buildings, never changed. Same doors. I looked through recently when my cousin lives very close. I looked through the school gates. Nothing looks like it's changed. So I think that will be another visit just like that.
Crazy.
But and that's what I gained from when you said photograph your past in the present. I thought, yes, I've got some unfinished business there. So that shows that your films are very inspirational in that respect. And I would imagine other viewers find it that way as well. Have you received that sort of feedback?
Well, honestly, I feel like the film community, probably in general, but also the community that I feel is connected to this channel, is very, very lovely and very kind of family-like. And I see the same names popping up in the comment section. I get, messages from the same people. So I kind of feel like there's a connection because people watch the videos and they tell me what they liked about it. And it's just really, really nice to get some sort of feedback, because sometimes when I'm doing these videos, I'm sitting on my computer on my own. When I'm going out to shoot, I'm often going to shoot on my own. So having this community aspect of it, I think is probably, what keeps me busy, keeps me doing it, because this feedback is so valuable and so nice and so beautiful. And what I wanted to say with your school project, don't wait too long, because I've talked about this with friends, and they told me that their school, just like from 1 month to the other, was just erased because there was some building project. So we never know how long we still have the chance to do those sort of projects.
Yes.
So if you have the chance to do it, I think it sounds like a lovely project. Do it and don't wait too long, because we never know how long we still will have the chance to do those.
Good point. Advice definitely taken. I meant to ask actually, when you went to Poland, you took 2 very special cameras. I know you took your M6, but you took another camera that had a nostalgic importance to you. What was that camera?
Well, it's called a scorched, which is a plastic camera that is manufactured or was manufactured in Poland. And there's actually a funny story to it, because this one was my father's very first camera that he got when he was like around 10 years old to his first communion. In Poland, usually like the first communion is a big celebration. It's like bigger than birthday and everything. It's like the thing where children get the biggest gifts in their life so far, right? So back then, getting a camera was mind-blowing. He was the first kid in town who had a camera. So he was taking photos with that camera back then. And it's a very, very simplistic camera. It's made out of plastic. It does only have 2 aperture settings, 2 shutter speed settings. It takes medium format film. You cannot even really focus. There's just a fixed focus. So it's very, very simple. And my father still kept the camera for all of these years. For 50 years, he brought it from place to place where he was moving. And my parents know that I'm into photography, that I've been into photography for a couple of years now. And just, I think 2 years ago or something like that, my father was like, oh, wait, I think I have a camera. And I was like, what? I've been doing this like for 5 years. And I was always hoping that you would dig out a camera somewhere. Honestly, I hope maybe for a Leica or something like that. So, but still, I was like, Father, what have you been up? Were you listening? So that definitely came as a surprise when he dug out this camera, perfectly in box, still with all the papers and manuals and everything, amazing. Which kind of shows how much care he took of the camera and how, what a big thing it was to get a camera back then. So that was kind of an extra point of nostalgia for me to be able to shoot with my father's camera in my father's birth town, in the place where he used to grow up in. So that was kind of going full circle there, I feel.
Amazing. Why are personal projects so important? I know you make them because we've seen the films of them, but why are they important?
I feel like things are just meaningful if we have some sort of knowledge or some sort of expertise about things. And I am the only expert of my life. There's nobody else who has more expertise about me and my experience. So if I want to talk about something, then I should be the expert of the things that I'm talking about. And the only thing that I can really be an expert of is me and my life. So I guess this is why personal projects matter to me, because I know that I'm the only one who can tell the story, because nobody else can tell the story with my experience and my perception of it.
And what makes the difference when it comes to how you shoot it, whether it's your fantastic plate camera or a 35mm camera, or perhaps as I now know, that you're getting back into digital work as well, or even film or sound, or spoken word. What tools do you reach to, and what makes the tool that you reach to when it comes to a project?
You said before that you see me thinking and that you think that I'm a thinker, and I guess that is correct. But when it comes to choosing the tool, I think it's just the opposite, because overthinking it in most cases doesn't really help me, but it just leads to me being over prepared, having too much gear and too much choices. So I feel like what I try to rely on when choosing the tool is more or less my intuition, just trying to feel what kind of camera would be the right one for this. And for example, when I went to Poland for this trip, I knew that I could bring 500 cameras and still feel like, there's something that I would miss. Yeah. But I knew that my Leica M6 and the Synchro were the only cameras that could tell the the emotional story of my background, because these are my most emotional tools that I have. So it's just intuition, I guess.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I know if I go on a long journey, I think, right, okay, I'll probably need a longer focal length for that. I'll need this and I'll need that. Maybe I'll need a zoom for that. And actually, when you're talking about your emotional response choosing a camera, you chose quite wide focal lengths.
Yeah. I guess because we always want to be prepared for everything. And I fall into this trap all the time as well. But what happens in my experience most of the time is that I carry luggage that I in the end don't choose or don't need because I just don't use it. So packing that extra zoom lens most of the time just collects dust and doesn't really help. So I try to stop it. But it's very hard because still sometimes it comes out to, okay, but what if this happens? Okay, just bring 10 extra rolls of film because you never know. And then I end up packing 30 rolls, even though I just have 2 days or something like that. And I know that I will never blast to so many rolls. So it still happens that I overpack and that I think too much.
Your favorite roll of film? I think it's going to be a 400 speed film. I think.
Correct, yeah.
And why 400?
What do you think, black and white or color?
Well, I think it's going to be black and white. Oh, I don't know, actually.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Well, I wish I hadn't corrected myself there. Because, of course, in Portugal, it wasn't necessarily, was it? But no, I think it would be black and white. 400 because I think you feel you have more latitude. And having watched your films, whether it's really sunny, see, I have watched, whether it's really sunny or cloudy, you feel you have the latitude. So that's sort of but I don't know what brand.
Well, when it comes to black and white film, my favorite film must be Ilford HP5. Just so versatile, so beautiful. I love the tones, and this is my go-to film for black and white all the time.
Yeah. What are you working on now? Is there a new project that you can tell us about?
So, well, I'm always working on multiple projects at the same time, so it's kind of hard to think about what's interesting to tell, maybe. But I'm currently doing because we're talking about black and white, I'm currently doing a black and white challenge that I actually put on myself. Nobody gave me this challenge, but sometimes I like to punish myself for whatever reason. But so I decided to shoot only black and white for this whole year. And I'm, it's October, so it's nearly ending. And I'm trying to think about ways how to put this experience together, because even though black and white and Ilford HP5 is my favorite film, I like shooting color a lot, and I really feel like I'm a stronger color shooter than I'm a black and white shooter. So this challenge was very difficult for me, and I'm thinking about ways how to kind of make peace with this project once I'm finished. And I'm thinking about doing a video about my experience, but I was also thinking about maybe doing some sort of printed project, as for example a zine. So this is kind of still in the processing phase. I'm not done yet because the challenge is still ongoing, but I'm already thinking about ways how to end this challenge, to kind of give it justice and to make peace with it once January is around the corner.
We've talked a lot about, obviously, in our interview about filming for videos and so on and so forth, but also your relationship with actually printed media is important. I noticed on your website that you do sell prints, so that feeling of something tactile in your hands as a print can only be is still quite important to you, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think just as with the videos, printed images have a different dimension to them because they are not on a screen, but they are in a third dimension where you have the texture of the paper, the thickness of the paper, the exact color of the paper, which all kind of transform your image differently. So I feel like there's nothing comparable to seeing an image printed on beautiful paper, because this is a form of expression as well. You have to decide, shall it be glossy, shall it be matte, shall it be structured, shall it be kind of flat or not? And all these decisions in the end kind of, for me, make the image complete, which it doesn't feel once it's only on the screen.
I'm piecing together a book of what I'm calling the Book of Why at the moment. I'm collating or collecting the reasons why people photograph. And since we've mentioned him already, Joel Meyerowitz features in there from his conversation and his why. I'm interested to know what yours is. I'm looking at you as a thinker. And it may not be a question you've thought about, of course. But what's your why? What drives you? What makes you do this?
The why. I think I could either answer in giving 100 reasons why, because there's just so many, or I think the most dominant reason for me is because I couldn't not do it. There's no way to stop. It's just how I try to understand myself and the world around me. So this is just the camera is my translator to everything that I want to understand. So I guess that's the why.
Love, love, love the Portugal film and the poetry and her trip back to find her hometown in Poland. I know that she's known for her tuition, talking about using film cameras, but the films that struck a chord with me were the ones where we get both human Karin and the instructional Karin all in one sitting. Absolutely perfect. I will link and I will embed some films on the show page today. So that's it for today. Apart from look, this hill coming up. I shall get my words in now, climb this hill and come back and share a last couple of words in a few moments' time. You don't want an out-of-breath me. No, thank you, Neil. That's it, yes, for today. Apart from the play-out song and a postscript right at the end of the show, a very special, well, they're always special postscripts, but I did lay a reference earlier on to who's providing that today. The last words of the show today in a moment, after the play-out song. No programme next week, although I do have an extra mile for you. That will be extra mile number 60. It's extra mile number 59 today. It's waiting for you, and I think I'm just simply going to call this episode Just Say Yes.
On this week's Extra Mile.
He starts asking me what I'm photographing and why I'm doing it and stuff like that. And then he asked, have you ever done any food photography? And I said, no. And he says, well, would you be interested?
Mike Miller is my shooting the breeze guest, one of our extra milers, talking about food photography, but so much more than that, actually. We've got letters as well that you've been leaving following the Extra Mile show. So if you want to make an extra walk with me in the next week, then the Extra Mile number 59, and all the other 58, and the more episodes before that are all waiting for you. The Extra Mile is part of our private Patreon channel, where our wonderful community of supporters, our walkers, our photographers who want to keep this podcast here week after week make a modest and generous monthly or annual contribution. I did look up a different ending. Our monthly support for this show starts for less than the maple hazel latte that I bought at Heathrow when picking up mother and father-in-law from the airport on Tuesday. There we go. I found another thing that's less than... in fact, no, that was more. No, it was more than what it costs to support this show each month. That's the point of it, Neil. I know, I'll get there. Right, our PS for the show is to come. But before that, we need a play-out song, just to make some final frames to. Or think about what's been said today. Usually I have something that's sort of very dreamlike in many respects. Something quite emotive quite often. But today I've sort of been walking in and out of the showers, and so I'm going to play you I think I should play you a rainy song. Shall I? Yes. This is, I like this. Ben Bostic, and this is called After the Rain.
Oh, rain on me, you stormy skies, wash my sins away. Let the thunder roll, let the lightning strike, until I'm clean again. Oh, moonshine bright behind the clouds, but don't you show your face till I'm clean by and by, and I'm free from earthly trials, till I'm new again after the rain. Oh, after the rain, when the clouds roll away, when my skin is soaked through with water, when the pain is awful great, I can face the coming days, when I'm new again after the rain. When I come or go, to the west, to the east, or the mountain or over the sea, it don't matter where I am, I will be a happy man if those clouds just follow me. Someone said to me, you're a fool to wait, I will take you down to the river, and the stream will wash away all the pain of yesterday. I said thanks, but I'll just wait for the rain. Oh, after the rain, when the clouds roll away, when my water. When my legs can't hold the weight, when I'm waiting for my fate, I'll be new again after the rain. What Jesus said, he never spoke to me. But I thank the sky above for pouring down her holy love to save a wretch like me. Oh, after the rain, when the clouds roll away, when my skin is soaked through with water, when the night won't turn to day, when the pain is awful great, I'll be new again after the rain.
Ben Bostic's After the Rain. Good timing, Ben, because actually you should call it Before the Rain, because it's just really started raining a lot now. So I'm going to dive under the cover of some trees because I need to record a few more bits for the special Extra Mile edition for this week. That's out now. Let me make up just about got enough juice in the camera to make one last picture. A final sketchbook from today's walk. It's beautiful here at Bowdown. You and I must come and do this walk together, you know, in person. Yep. I know you live a long way away, but I was just thinking it would be nice if we could. ISO 800, shutter speed 1/25, f5.6. The path weaving its way. Weaving its way, so it is. Just a few closing thoughts before the PS. My sincere thanks to you if you are or about to become an Extra Miler. Thank you. My promise is that we keep building this community of kindness, a safe place to share our thoughts in the years to come about what we do and love, photographing and walking and sharing. Talking of which, on the show page there are some very handy, in terms of sharing, buttons that you can click and help share the show. And be sure to press that follow or subscribe button on your podcast app, please. There are so many people that listen that aren't actually subscribed. Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. So if you can subscribe, that would be lovely. My thanks to Neil Ford, who looks after IT, Andrea Gilpin, who's across Instagram, Kelly Mitchell and Emily Renier, who look after our Facebook members. Write a postscript for the show. Today it's from Randy Bullerwell, from his website that I mentioned earlier, which I will link to on the show page. I think it really captures the essence of how wonderful it is to be able to photograph the world we are genuinely, pictorially curious about. So from Randy Bullerwell today, the final closing words, the PS for the show. It's this getting out and confronting the start of these days in the dawn light that brings solace, strength, and hope.
The Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.